Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Catholic Recon, Testimonies from Reverts and Converts. I'm your host, Eddie Trask. This week's guest is a convert slash revert, Francisco Sitja. Great to see you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Tom.
Now, for those that are, whether it's on Spotify or YouTube, where are you calling from today?
I'm from Eugene, Oregon.
But didn't you have roots in you? I thought you said something about Brazil.
Yes, I am from Brazil. I was
Okay.
born in Brazil, raised in Brazil, and ended up here this January from Canada. I was living in Canada
No kidding.
until
Okay.
last December. Yes.
Okay. I'm sure we'll get into that in your story. So,
Mhm.
Francisco, where did your faith journey begin?
If I start with the faith journey per se, it would be so long the story. But I guess going back to my unknown, I was baptized as a Catholic as a baby, as 2 months year old baby, because I was born in Brazil. It was kind of a cultural norm there, the cultural thing. Everybody mostly in Brazil back when I was born, 1982, was Catholic. So uh, whenever someone asked the question, what are you? I would say I'm Catholic, and I had to ask my mother because I never heard it before. So, what are we? And she's like, oh, you're baptized Catholic. My grandmother, I believe she's baptized Catholic too, and she was the one thing that I remember having exposure faith when I was a child is that one night my grandmother taught me and my younger brother. I have one younger sibling, about 2 years younger. She taught us to pray the Our Father. So that's pretty much the only exposure that I have to anything related to any type of faith was that I never forgot those words. But after that, I was raised as a atheist. My mother was into politics. My father died when I was only 5, so I don't have any paternal side of the story. I didn't even meet my whole family from the father's side until much later, until I was grown up. And yeah, so growing up in a communist household, sort of, my stepfather, whom my mother met when I was 11, he was also like into those things, like into the union and working in the union, actually, not just being a part of it, but really into politics and being. What I heard usually in the house was, I don't want to speak ill of them or anything. They're great. I had a great childhood, but they don't know. So, and I didn't know, and it was mockery. It's mockery regarding the church. So whenever it was, for example, I have this vividly in my mind. Whenever there was an athlete at the end of the game and they're giving thanks, oh, thanks to God that I did this and accomplished that, and the team would be also, is the loser also thanking God? Why is how come that? That kind of situation, whereas usually towards mockery. So I developed a little bit of indifference towards faith because, as far as I could see, it's a part of the Brazilian culture. It's very Catholic culture, but it's, to me, it seemed just a ritual. It seems like just something that people go do there and they kneel and they do this and that. I never went to a mass. I never entered the church when I was a child, except for maybe a couple times in a school trip, like something like that. And that went on until I grew up in my adolescence, and uh, it dragged into my upbringing, into how I saw relationships, and trying to stick with the theme of faith. For example, relationships with women, my first girlfriend, and all of that. It was it was never related. It was completely compartmentalized. My practical knowledge of the world, what I saw people living, and I never witnessed anybody living a Catholic life for as long as I lived until my 37th, 80th birthday. I never saw anybody living there. I have one experience when I was in high school. It was a friend whose name was Israel. He's called Israel. He's still alive. And my brother was a little bit more inflammatory than I was towards religious folks, and he used to mock him because he was evangelical. But this friend of mine, he was my best friend. We usually hung around playing basketball or video games or things like that. And my brother used to mock him like about he nicknamed him Israel Jesus. For some reason, he thought that would have been an offense of some sort, but it's like an honor to be called after that. And I remember the very mature answer that he had at the time. Israel, he would look at my brother and say, "It's okay, I'll pray for you, Enrique." And he would just say that he would not give him any argument or any grief over the mockery, and that never left my mind until I converted. That was one of the first things that I recalled, and I did contact him later to thank him about that. And yeah, so this was until then I started university, and once I moved from a smaller city into a big city there in Brazil, where it was university was, and my parents moved. My mother and my stepfather moved and left us at home with my brother and I going to university, and that was the beginning of downhill life. I was very shy. I was very introverted since my father died. I had very few friends. My friends were mostly my brother's friends. And when that happened, we started living together. I mean, we're not super well off, but we had enough means, especially for Brazil, like the standard of living that we had, is that we did work. They encouraged us to work, but we didn't really. They provided us with enough money to go around, and we kind of abused that money to do bad things, partying, and we had our poor neighbors. They were very I don't know how they never kicked us out of those apartment buildings that we lived in, because we would have parties from 10 p.m. until the morning came up sometimes, and it was loud. So we did that, and with that came all the evils that come with it: drunkenness and fornication, and bringing prostitutes into the house, and doing all of those things. My grandmother, she still lived in the city, so she would on occasion come on Sunday mornings, on the very days that we didn't want anybody to come up, and then she would witness us and our friends like on the ground, throwing up on the ground, like completely destruction. And she survived that. There was some episodes where she's screaming, like almost with my friends, help him, help him. Yeah, there's a lot of those. Uh, so yeah, anyway, so that went downhill from there, and it wasn't the bottom. So it was just how we thought to live. And in my own mind, what made a man was conquest. I didn't have any sort of measure of how to see myself as a man. So and it became sort of a competition with my cousins and friends, that we would go out to bars and clubs and try to pick up as many women as we could. I was never very good at it, so it was something that I aspired to. And eventually I kind of quit that and went into a relationship with the woman who would become my first wife when I was about 21 or 22. I met her in an English class. So we came into contact there. She this In the middle of that, I got a new job. I was finishing university about this time, uh, and I got a job in Rio, which is the big city in Brazil, the second biggest city there. And I moved there when my parents were already leaving, so I moved back in with them to work there. She went to London when I moved there, figuring, okay, I'll do something else with my life, and I went to Rio. And after a year apart, we got back together. We got married. But she was a Seventh-day Adventist. Her mother was, on occasion, she bought me a book. She said something, oh, see how this is compatible with science, with this and that. No, I never cared about it. My perspective was completely indifferent. And I wasn't ever one to really research into it. I just never thought that God could reveal himself or had any cares for the world outside of the Bible 2,000 years ago. So I just dismissed it always. And eventually, after 5 years of married, I wasn't very happy. We didn't have a firm purpose of having constituting family, having children. And I was, in my mind, I was cheating on her. I didn't have affairs, but I had people on the side on occasion and going to prostitutes and doing things like that. I'm not sure I ever told her this, but yeah. Anyway, so it's 5 years. When I was 30 years old, I decided to separate and become uh, a bachelor in Rio, and immediately the same day I invited an old friend from my high school who we played basketball with to become my wingman, sort of. And I got into I just wanted to party. That's all I wanted. I wanted to just enjoy life as much as I could. And we started doing exactly that. So out of 7 days of the week, I would go out and party and drink 4 or 5 days. Maybe some weeks it would be all every day. And my whole life revolved around partying, meeting women or trying to meet women. And I was studying those pickup artists, which are like, there's some guys that became known sort of at the time. It was the beginning of what some people now these days now call the red pill. They were already calling themselves the red pill back then, which is uh, a very deep criticism of marriage as being a broken institution, of why would men get married if when the women leave, they take everything, half of what they have, take the children, all the responsibilities on men, and there's nothing in it for men, for men. It's just all the benefit for the women. So that was kind of the gist of what I fell into at that time. And I made a resolution that I wasn't going to marry anymore. It wasn't worth it. That I didn't want it ever to do it again. And I kept doing that for about 2 years. But it kind of escalated from there because it's like a drug. Whereas, and I'm not saying this because I'm not glorifying that kind of lifestyle. It's not about that. It's actually the other way around. About 2 years after that, when I was feeling so proud and so over my head with my accomplishments, quote unquote, that's when I broke. I had a mental breakdown, which at the time I classified only as a mental breakdown, but then later I would realize, not too much later, there was a spiritual problem. I was spiritually sick. I had the doctor called at the time psychotic breakdown, which was I thought I could hear people's voices and I knew their thoughts, and I thought I had superpowers, and I couldn't reconcile that worldview with the atheistic worldview, which was what I practiced, but I never stopped to think about it. So eventually, once that happened, I took a month off of work. I think it was 2014, February. It was during Carnival, the hottest um, time in Brazil to party, and I couldn't do anything because I was out. I was completely out. I couldn't. I required an intervention one night where all my friends, my family took me in a room to convince me that I hadn't done what I thought I did. I thought I was going to be accused of rape by a woman whom I had slept with the previous Friday, and I had to find her. I had to find her. I was paranoid about that, and I was also high on drugs and on constantly. So it took an intervention. After the intervention, I decided, okay, I need help. And I sought help, but the only help that I could find was psychological or psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist, I was very disturbed and saddened by the fact that he didn't even ask more than 3 questions from me, gave me some drugs and sent me away. And then when I went to a therapist after that, I went back to work and resumed my life as it was before. But the therapist was involved into spiritism, which is that religion sort of from Allan Kardec. I think it was a French man who did spirit séances to call on the spirits of the dead, and it's become very popular in Brazil since the 80s or 90s. And
Did you say? I'm sorry. Did you say séance? Is that what you said?
yeah, they sit on a room and they call on the spirits of the past people on
Got
our
it.
lives. Yeah.
Got it.
So I went to a couple of those. I didn't see anything or feel anything during the event there. But after I got home, I had a couple of days when I felt I was being haunted and I couldn't control my thoughts. I had just multiple voices in my head talking at the same time, and I was panicking. I had a panic attack under my bed, just hide under the blanket and cry. And I decided to start writing my thoughts. It was the only way to make that stop is that I would just get a keyboard and start typing like a journal. And that made me calm down a little bit. But eventually I had to drop this. After a few months, I dropped this therapist because I realized it wasn't going to work. And I didn't know anything about religion at that time. So I couldn't have figured out this is demonic, or if I call in the name of Jesus, there may be some. I didn't, it wasn't even a consideration. To me and to my family, my parents, they thought I was crazy. I thought I was crazy. It was just that. As far as I was concerned, that was the only option. Uh, and so that was a couple episodes that happened. And towards the end of the year, it was still 2014, I went to Australia. So I went to Australia. I had met this woman from Canada in one of the parties that I went to right after the first day that I party after having this breakdown. I went out and I had sort of I could say that I prophesied it, but I don't know. It's just that one thing that I was getting high at home and drinking, and I used to go party by myself. It was just lone wolf going out to party. And that day I closed, before I closed the door, I said, I'm going to meet someone tonight. Closed the door, left, and I met her. And of course, we did all the wrong things in a relationship that it's not supposed to be. But what remained is that uh, once I went to Australia at the end of the year, I had relationship with four different women at the same time. It was 1 weekday for each one of them and 2 days for party. And so when I got to Australia, it was with the intention to party. I had a friend who was living there, also from high school, mutual friend from this one who was my roommate. And I thought we were going to there to party. We went to stay in a hostel. Once we got there, it was in Perth. He had a Bible, and he had a Bible full of writings and full of tags and full of page markers. And I was like, he really reads this stuff. He really believes this stuff. It made an impression on me. I had never seen anybody that actually believed in what was there. And he was living in the rectory with the priest. So the priest was helping him pay for his studies, or the parishioners were. I don't know exactly who was paying, but someone else was paying for his studies. And he was all in. So he took us to mass on Sunday, probably hungover. And I'd never gone to a mass in my whole life. He did two things. He gave me a green scapular. I didn't know what it was. I was just, okay. I just put it on just to be polite. I didn't have any idea of what that was. To me, it was just a adornment, something like that. He took us to mass. I went to mass, and I remember that day in the mass when I got there. After it was some verse from John or the gospel, and once everybody got in line, I had no idea what I was doing. I just walked into the line expecting to receive communion like everybody else. Then the priest stopped me right in front of him and said, "Are you a Catholic?" And I was like, I didn't know what to say. Yes, but no. And he said, "Okay, we'll talk later. You can't do it." And I remember how I got offended. I got so offended, but I got quiet and walked away in a grump out of that. And that kind of marked me. And about a few days later, we stayed there 3 weeks, about 20 days. And we didn't go to mass every day. But I remember about a week after he gave me this green scapular, I had this, and I didn't connect this until 3, 4 years ago. It was about a week after I decided in my head I couldn't live my life like that anymore. I had to change it. I had to pick a woman. I can't do this living. It's not doing me any good. Like, it's not a way to live. It's not a proper way to live. But I decided I got to pick a woman. I need to choose one of them because I had like three or four at the same time. So how am I going to do it? So once I traveled back to Brazil, I decided, okay, I'm going to do it, but I don't know how to choose one. I like two of them. And what I decided I do, I went to an astrologer. So I sought one of those guys that read the stars and positions of, and he read my future. So he told me if I pick this one, it's going to be kind of like this, that one's, and I picked the one that seemed the most exciting one, which would be in Canada. And okay, so now I politely ditched all the other ones. Of course, it was a major problem, but
It was a what? Say that
so
again, Francisco.
it was a major problem. It
Oh,
got
major
sensitive
problem.
because
Got it.
yeah,
Yeah.
one of the yeah they liked me and I wasn't particularly lying to them, but I was just playing them as objects. So eventually, what I decided, because my mind was still at that place where I'm not gonna get married ever, and she was a little bit older than me. So I thought there's no reason for me to be married to a woman. And oh, there's one thing that comes in between. The first woman whom I met after I divorced and separated was an American woman. She was from New York, and we were hanging together for about 6 months immediately after my previous wife moved out. And she, when her visa expired, she had to leave Brazil, and I was very distraught by that. It hurt me. Like I felt like we had something nice, and she had to leave, and I still had that fresh in my mind about a year and a half, 2 years later, thinking this woman is from Canada. She's gonna have to leave, but I don't want to insist with this relationship unless I can get her into it, and I'm not going to marry her unless I know that she can conceive and have a child. So I, like a psychopath, decided that I was have a child. I was going to have a child with her, or try to. And the destiny, well, God wanted it. That she got pregnant within a month. The first month, she became pregnant, and then I decided, okay, I'm going to propose now. And this was all 2015, and propose, I mean, civil marriage. We moved in together, we had a child, but then things started to change. I decided I wasn't going to do those things anymore, but still, I was completely addicted to what I was doing. So I was still going out and staying out until 6 a.m. on Saturday mornings, Sunday mornings on occasion. She didn't ask me. She wasn't inquisitive. I guess she didn't want to know because she knew it in the back of her head and her heart that I wasn't being faithful anyway. But uh, I began to have second thoughts about myself when I found out we didn't know what the sex of the baby was going to be. But I began thinking about who do I want to be for this child? If it's a girl, I don't want I don't want my daughter to be around with a man like myself. That was I was beginning to get convicted of that I couldn't continue living like that and hiding it from my family, having a child who's going to grow to have a father who's like that. So I decided I had to change. I just didn't know what path to take. And so I quit my job eventually a year because she was working there temporarily in Brazil, the mother of my children and my child. And we decided to go back to Canada. So we did all of that in 2016. End of 2016, we moved into Canada, brought a child that was 9 months at the time. She was a little girl, 9 months, Kaya. And but things immediately exploded because we never thought about the difficult things and talked about it. I didn't know any. To me, it wasn't even a consideration, religion or faith or morals. I was amoral. Basically, I just did. I did what I could get away with, but I never had many second thoughts about the consequences of what I did as long as I could get hide it. And so we began with finances, and the finances began to explode. And yes, and I decided within 4 months that I wanted to separate. I just didn't know how to deal with it. And my stepfather on the phone convinced me to stick around and to try to hold on to the relationship for the children too. The child, we had one, and I again, as my crazy head, worked back then. I decided I was going to double down and had another child. So she conceived again within the first month, and we had another child. This in 2017. She got pregnant. She was born on Christmas Day of 2017, our second daughter. And that gave us a little bit of peace in the house, but it wasn't lasting. It was really bad. It was to the point where screaming, like really shouting in the house. And at that time, I was waiting for a visa. By the time I got, by the time I got the visa, it was June 2018, and I had been waiting for a long time. And I got a work to go to Victoria in the island. So I moved out of the house, went to work there, and that's kind of what pivoted my life there, because I was living by myself finally, and I had the whole week for me. And I didn't. Second thing is that I didn't have enough money to spend partying like I used to in Brazil, and I was living on a more modest lifestyle, and I had a lot of time for myself. So I started going into a bunch of conspiracy theories, and stuff that I had been looking at before, things like 9/11, all those conspiracies. I dug into all of them. And I guess going back, my disillusion with my own belief systems began in Brazil when the, the party to which my family was affiliated to, they used to portray themselves as the honest ones, and it turned out that when they took power, it was the opposite. That broke my reality at the time. It was the mid 2000s, and since then, I stopped caring about people's opinions anymore, because I was shown to be such a fool by it's like that saying, "Fool me once, shame on you; fool me twice, shame on me." So I was, since then, and I got into many other conspiracies, and I started feeling an attraction for the Bible around that same time when I got that. I kept wearing the scapular through these 3 4 years. One broke, I went again, and he gave me another one. He gave me a brown one after that one broke. And I began reading anything I could get my hands on, because when I got the mental breakdown thing, I realized that there was something spiritual that I couldn't explain. There was some certain coincidences happening around me that didn't fit, but I didn't know what was true and what was not. So what I began doing is that I wanted to read every religion that I could get my hands on. I never went deeply into any of them, but I needed to know if there is one that is true, I need to learn which one it is. And I took that as an endeavor. So while I was here in Canada, my first year, and then when I moved out by myself, I was basically exploring. And it was my first time when the Bible spoke to me. It was in there. I had this verse from the Proverbs. I didn't know where to start the Bible reading from. To me, it seemed impossible where to get it. So I'm just going to start and open this 1,200-page book. It didn't make sense to me, the stories. I didn't understand anything, but there was something about the Proverbs that made sense, because it was short sentences saying something that is prescriptive, that says, do this, don't do that. If you do this, you're that. And I got into the Proverbs 5, I believe, where it says that by the cords of your sins you were bound, towards the end of that proverb. And what happened, I just stood staring at that verse for the longest time. I don't know even how long. It is just, that's me. It's like it was 100% for me, because I thought I got now these two children. I would like, if I could, to go back to living my single life and having do whatever I want, but now I got to be responsible for them, and I'm stuck with this. And it's my fault, because ultimately I made the decision I wanted to have these children, and now I don't even know what to do anymore with my life. So I was at the end of not knowing what to do, and the Bible really spoke to me at that time. And there were a couple other episodes when strangers would ask to pray for me on the ferry. And I went to church. I went for the first time, I decided I took my daughters on a Sunday morning. I went to a Protestant church. I didn't know the difference. I just walked to the first one that I saw when I was on the bus. I took them in there. And it was a Broadway church in Vancouver. And I went there, and nothing connected with me there. It was just the music. And then when the music ended, I saw the people outside, and I was open. I wanted someone to invite me to come back, and I gave them my phone number. They never called me back. I never went back. So that just happened. I thought, okay, maybe it wasn't supposed to be. That one thing happened also the same year. And once I came back, uh, I continued to read and to get into a little deeper. And then I met, because I was following all these guys, those red pill guys. They were into uh, a bunch of self-help things. And among those, one of those guys, he called himself Victor Pride. At the time his website was boldanddetermined.com. This guy kind of got a conversion. And then suddenly he disappeared. And he started posting before he disappeared about religion. He started posting about this pastor, videos and prayer videos of this pastor, Derek Prince, who is a pastor from the UK, I think he was. And I started listening to that. I remember when I was listening, my hands would shake. I'd go like this, deliverance prayers, the spirit of this and spirit of that, and I get scared, and I had to turn it off because I started panicking just listening to the prayers on my ears. And I stood away from that for about 6 months, and I went back to it after I had moved back with my children. My life then, we got back together. I'm just trying to compress the time because I know we have limited time. I'm not looking at the clock, so I don't know. 8:30.
You're doing great.
Okay.
You're doing great.
So I went back into the mainland, out of the island, took another job, and that job was then allowed me to go live back with them. But I made a big doo doo when right before when I moved. I cheated on my spouse then, the weeks before moving back in, and I felt so guilty, compelled that I needed to confess to her, and I went over to her and I told that. But I don't think I ever even apologized. So I was just more one of those things. I did this, but I didn't have the courage to say I'm sorry, and she kind of tolerated me. She never said okay. She was quiet. She tolerated me. We got back together in spite of that. We were never a couple anymore after that. The same way. We're just sleeping in separate rooms, but living in the same house, doing the best we could with it. And then because I got into all those conspiracies, that was the end of 2019. It was when the pandemic started. And I was into all of those. Oh, they're going to have all these vaccines. They're going to try to make me do it. I'll put the mask on. And I had decided that I wasn't going to do any of it. No one can put a mask on me. No one's going to inject anything in me. And I'm not going to do it. It doesn't matter what anybody says. And I knew it was going to have consequences. But I started defending myself. I found out I'm kind of a movement of people, but kind of all over the place, where they call themselves the sovereign citizens. There's one of the names, probably heard them called of. What they do is that they basically take the Bible as an authority and claim it that it has authority over civilization in general, especially the legal system. And then they claim that they're not government property, and that you can't do this to me because of that. And anyway, so it goes from there. But what I got from it, that somehow gave me a gift into reading the Bible with a different eye, with looking at it as literally true, not trying to interpret symbolically or whatever I was doing before without any direction. But I started really believing, okay, because it was convenient for me at the time to believe that that was what it says, what is exactly written there. And I started Bible thumping around everybody that would hear me, including my job. And it escalated it because I didn't have any defense for why I wouldn't do the things that mandate said that they would and policies. So I started sending emails with Bible quotes to them saying, you take accountability for this and that, and they never answered me. I was like, okay, maybe I cracked the code here or something. I can't get this guy to never answer me in default. They call it default in those guys. I said, if you send them 3 letters, they don't respond, they defaulted, you win And I was thinking that in terms of spiritual reality. So I'm giving them a warning and they're not acknowledging. So I'm like, I'm taking that as a spiritual truth. And I wanted to change my relationship, but it got worse at the time. I read it, 1 Corinthians chapter 7, where it says that we never talked about religion. So I didn't know her position in anything. And I just assumed that she didn't believe anything. And it says that if the unbelieving wife consents or spouse consents, that the relationship continues, that you go on with it for the sake of the children, so that they may be sanctified. Otherwise, they're lost. And I'm like, that was probably the first time I ever prayed something out of my heart. I don't think I ever did before then. I learned the previous year. I Googled the words for the Hail Mary, and I started praying in the morning on my way to work. So I would pray one Our Father, one Hail Mary on my walk to work. But I never prayed anything. I'd never prayed in my whole life. So this was the first time I was like, okay, if this is true and God wants me, you need to tell me, you need to show me. I don't know how to do this. I don't know, because our relationship is terrible. It's a disaster. But if you want me to stay for the children, I'll do it. That was probably the first time I ever said any real prayer. And I believe that, okay, I did my part. I said this prayer, God's going to figure it out, and I'm going to just keep doing what I'm doing and see where he goes from here. It got worse because while I was doing this Bible reading and stuff, I also was doing fasting, and I found out that the Muslims had a chapter dedicated to Virgin Mary, something else about Jesus. They thought he was a great prophet. And I thought, okay, I didn't know any spiritual reality or anything like that. I thought I was just going to do Ramadan. I'll do that. And I thought it was going to be harmless. And I did that for about 20 days, 3 weeks. Yeah, it was for a whole month. And it got worse during that month. I began fantasizing one night that I was going to hit her. Right when I was putting my children to sleep, I remember fantasizing in my head that if she does this again, I'm going to hit her. And I did that for too long that it kind of planted a seed in my head. And the next time that she did, I did it. I didn't hit her, but I did like this, just kind of to show that if I wanted, I could smash her with my bare arms. And that triggered her. And it was in front of the children. And that was once. And I did that a second time. And then the second time, it escalated. And she called the police. And I was under my own conviction. I thought I was under demonic oppression at the time. I Googled church near me, and I ended up finding a parish called St. Mary, because it was like the only one that I know. All the other ones, I don't know what they are. And I emailed this priest. It was during the pandemic. It was April, May. And I said, I need help with deliverance or exorcism or something like that. I don't know what's going on with me. And we couldn't meet in person, but he told me, I want to talk to you on the phone, Skype call. And I asked when, and he said, now, with capital letters. I was like, okay. And I went to the garage, I picked up my phone, started talking to him, and instead of approaching me from the perspective that I wanted to be taught, he asked me, how's your life? How are you going? What's up with you? How's your wife doing? And then I told him all this stuff, and he said, oh, you gotta talk to her, apologize to her, humble yourself. And I did that. So I started crying on the phone. I said, okay, I'll do it, Father. And I turned down the phone or hung up the phone and went inside the house. She was working inside the house, and I apologized to her. Can't believe if I was on my knees or not, but I apologized to her. She said she couldn't do it. I couldn't name all the things that I done, so I said, sorry for everything. And she said, I can't do it. That verse came to me from the Bible that Jesus says, I think it's in Matthew, that if you have to choose, if you hate your family, you have to hate your family or more than with your children, your friends. And I was like, okay, I'm trying to get this right. If she doesn't want to get this right, I picked up the Bible and showed it to her, hoping that she would get what I was trying to say. That if I had to make a choice, I would choose God and not her. And she didn't pick up on it. So I had in my own mind, okay, so if she doesn't forgive me, I don't think we can remain together. We need to move forward. And that remained for another 6 months because we got into problem with the province, with because of the children. They were concerned because they had police come over and all of that. They thought it could be a violence problem with the children, and we got free therapy, but the therapy didn't help. I thought the therapist was taking her side and certain things, and eventually I moved out. So it was about 7 months later, in January, I decided I was going to move out. And I found a house to move into, which God would have it is a house of Christian people. Like I didn't notice when I was looking at the place to rent, but every room had a picture on a wall of Bible verses. They weren't Catholic, but they were Christian. They were good Christians. And that later on, it clicked on me. It's like, there's a reason why I come here. This place I can't afford. I thought I wouldn't be able to afford any place to rent because it's so expensive around Vancouver. And what happened then, I got kind of depressed just living by myself. I couldn't leave the house. I was working from home. I didn't have my children anymore. I couldn't go to grocery stores. I couldn't go out to movie theaters anywhere because I wasn't consenting on, I didn't have the passport to do it. So I was totally isolated, and I got kind of depressed, having dreams, intense dreams. And I decided I was going to go into a dating website, and I want to do it the Christian way. So I thought like Christian mingle or Catholic match. I entered these two websites, and filled my profile with Bible verses, and thought maybe we'll attract the right person. And then the first person that sent me a like, I responded to her, and at the time I was feeling so guilty that I confessed to her. We exchanged phone numbers, and I opened an audio recording, and I talked for about 16, 17 minutes, just saying I did this and this and this. This is my life. I don't want to waste your time because I've done all of this stuff. But I understand if you don't want to deal with me. So this blah, 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 blah. And I told her at the end of it, she listened to it, and then her answer was very polite. She was Catholic. It was very, very Catholic. She said, I don't think we're compatible, but there's this novena that a friend of mine used that has been very good for her, very profitable, give her good results. And I didn't know what a novena was. I was like, okay. She sent me the PDF and a video testimony and all of it, the whole kit. So I downloaded and printed. I thought the novena was the miraculous Rosary novena, the 54-day Our Lady, one from Italy. I forgot which apparition it is. So I thought, well, I have time. I don't have anything else to do. I can't leave the house anyways, just 30 minutes. I didn't know. So I printed the details on all the prayers of the Rosary, started praying. I didn't have a Rosary, just counting my fingers. And I began praying every day. That's those 30 minutes. After about 2 weeks, I realized I have already confessed to everybody who will hear me. I'm already telling them, the taxi driver, the people on the street, anybody that I meet, I'm telling all my sins anyway. Why don't I go to confession and figure out if this works? I don't know if it's real or not, but I'll just try it. I can, at least when my days are done here, I can tell God that I tried. If it was the right thing to do, it will be known after I die. But I'll try. So I went to confession. I took one Saturday morning and went to the parish that I Googled again, Catholic church near me, Our Lady of this, Our Lady of that, and then there was this one that was called All Saints Parish. I'm like, I like All Saints, it's all of them, so I'll go to this one. And I went there and did my first confession on Saturday morning. Took a while. At the end, the priest said, "You've had a wild life." And I'm like, yes. I'm not gonna say thank you, but yeah. So that was I remember driving on my way out of there on the hill, and it felt like I was floating out of that. And it was, yeah. And I kept going back after that. After the first one, I didn't know anything, so if I really got a valid confession, it was a state of grace. It didn't last more than Sunday because I didn't know I was supposed to attend on Sunday Mass. But I began learning, so I began going back because I would be reminded of my other sins that I did that I didn't remind on the first confession. So like I felt okay, I feel like I should confess this one too. And what happened is that I had vacations on July. This was 2021, I believe, and I couldn't travel. I couldn't go anywhere because of the pandemic, and I didn't have anything to do during my vacations. Just 2 weeks at home. I couldn't even go out and go anywhere. I started going to daily mass. I was like, I would just drive my car and watching mass at the parking lot because the church was closed. And I did that for a few days until the priest or the deacon's wife noticed me and kind of introduced me to the deacon, and he introduced me to the chapel. I didn't know what the chapel was, and that was the beginning of life changing again because I didn't know what was going on there. He just showed me you can sit here if you don't know what to do, just get some prayers or read something. And I had a lot of time. I didn't know what to do, so I just spending time at the chapel, going to mass. And one of those days, I had my Bible, I was reading. It was, I think it was John 10, one of those where it says something. Jesus says something that I won't leave you orphan. I'll send you the Comforter to keep you company. And I was like, in my head, I was thinking, I'm doing all that I can to do things right this time. I haven't done this. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing my best, and I don't feel any comfort. I don't feel any consolation. I don't know what's going on. To me, it's just me trying. And then I looked at the Blessed Sacrament and just began crying. It was ugly crying. And this lady next to me got concerned. Are you okay? Okay, I'm okay. Yeah. She offered to help. I walked out after that, and it was right when I read that verse. It clicked with me. So I walked out. I went into my truck, and I had another Bible there under the seat. And I opened that Bible, and it was on Ecclesiastes chapter 3, and it's there. It looks like poetry. It's like for everything there's a season to love, a season to hate, a season to gather stones, to throw them, to plant it, to harvest. And I was still recollecting myself, getting myself together from all the crying inside, and I read, oh, that's so beautiful, thank you, God. And I closed the Bible, took my car, and I went out to go get my children. We were going to go to the swimming pool, I think, at that time. Once I got there, about 5, 6 blocks away, driving there, I never used Spotify or any of these things, but I always had MP3s on my computer, which I started downloading in the late 90s, like with Napster. So I have a large collection of 4,000 plus MP3s on my phone, and I always play those. When I was about to turn up and go up a hill, I pressed shuffle on there to play a song, and it started playing. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, and a time to every purpose under heaven. When that played, it just hit me. It was like a brick. I just started crying. I couldn't even drive anymore. I had to stop. I was like, it just was like a moment of, okay, God heard me. God, like Jesus really heard me when I said that. And it's the same verse that I just read. Like the odds, like my logical mind is thinking that the odds are too great for this to just happen right now. Jesus, you're playing one with me now, and that kind of changed for the next week. I was like walking in clouds. It was like I saw things different from a different perspective since, like when my children were playing the playground. I remember when it was just looking, oh, so beautiful. But it just flipped from an intellectual conversion where I had to convince myself that God could perhaps, maybe he exists, but who knows if he. It's one thing to jump from God exists to God reveals himself to people, to mankind first, and then to us individually, to each one. So that those were all leaps that I was taking one at a time. I couldn't necessarily conceive how Jesus resurrected and wasn't here, but he was somewhere else. It was one of the prayers I said early on. I just want to know the truth. I don't understand how this resurrection thing works, but if it is true, please just show me the truth. I need to know the truth. That's all. Just want to know the truth. And that's yeah. From that moment forward, it kind of ignited a lot more fire there when so I joined those alpha courses in the RCIA, and I started hungering for the Eucharist, where I really needed to. I wanted, and then I had to wait until April. It was such a long wait.
What year? What year was that?
To 2021.
Okay.
So this was all in September, August, July, September 2021, and I had to wait until April. I talked to the priest and said, technically you could because you're baptized Catholic, but I think it'd be good for you to go along with everybody else and do it on time.
Yeah.
And I agreed, okay. And I still had to go through a lot of issues with humility, submitting my will to God. I didn't understand what that was about because I was still going to mass, not wearing any masks, and God got me into a church that would accept me going to there, and but it didn't come without some certain friction with some people there, and I almost got kicked out of the church one time, but Father kind of saw in my earnest desperation that I didn't know what to do, and he tolerated me there for after me causing him grief, probably. And this was late, and then I lost my job. So I lost my job because I knew I was going to lose my job
So
because of the vaccines thing. So I just sank deeper after that because I went through that, and then in November my job let me go. They said I abandoned the job when in fact they didn't let me in. But I was running out of money, so I had like $5,000-6,000, and I was trying to figure out how long I can stay with that, and I was already in a tough spot with my family, my parents, that I didn't want to ask them for money at all. Like they could help, potentially could, but they were not testing me, but spirits were testing me at the time. We were having arguments. They came over in November. They thought I was crazy because I was constantly talking about Bible and stuff. And when that happened, I decided there was a psalm verse that convinced me not to do it. So it's that psalm that talks about where is your God. So please don't let my mother think where is your God when you need him, that you're going to ask me for help. And I decided I'm going to be homeless, but I'm not going inside any. I'm not going to ask him for help. Whatever happens, happens. And that became me praying. I started praying rosaries, multiple rosaries during the day. 4 or 5 hours in the adoration chapel every morning until 12 or 1 p.m. because I didn't have a job anymore, didn't have anything else to do. So I was just praying rosaries and listening to preaching when I wasn't praying. It became over my whole day became that. And because I couldn't receive communion, I decided I'm going to do this consecration. I did a consecration, Father Calloway, for to Saint Joseph. So I did that, and again, God was very gentle to me because the day after I got consecrated, it was January 1st, 2022, and I got a statue of Saint Joseph, the sleeping Saint Joseph. And I decided, I talked to my friend, a friend who's having trouble in his marriage, who's living in Australia, moved to Estonia, and then his wife didn't want to go back to Australia. He was going to lose his permanent residency there if that happened. And I wrote down a prayer on his behalf for St. Joseph, put it under the paper, like I posted it under the statue, and I went to bed. When I woke up the next morning, he woke me up with a call telling me that she had changed her mind suddenly. And it was just me and him crying on the phone and giving
wow.
thanks to God. And the next few days after that, I got every day I would do the same thing, put a prayer under St. Joseph's statue. The next day, something I would get a special grace to tell me that it was answered. And it was small things, it wasn't as great as the first one, but still I was feeling rewarded by that. And then I decided I was going to do the next best thing, consecration to Our Lady. I found out about Saint Louis de Montfort. So I began the 33-day, all that. Ran through it because I wanted to finish before my first communion, which was scheduled for April 16th. That was the Easter of that year. And I was looking for a job. I was running out of money. I'm trying to compress it real quickly, sorry. And what happened is that, to make it short, I was running out of money. I remember one day I got an offer to start the job finally after praying all these rosaries and all this stuff. Someone offered me a job. It wasn't a job. It was a contract, like as a freelancer, but that's all I needed. 3 months of work to pay rent. And I went to confession. I told the priest, I'm feeling so peaceful that I'd almost prefer not getting this job now, because I really don't want to interrupt my focus on my preparation for confirmation. And it was mid-March. And when I said that, they postponed once, postponed twice. Then they scheduled the third date for start of the job. It was Monday, April 18th, the first day after my confirmation. So I got that as a little gift right there. And things just, ever since then, the 3 months became 6, the 6 became 9, the 9 became 12, the 12 became 15, until I worked 2 years for that company. It was supposed to be 3 months.
Wow.
And it was in the US, working remotely. And yeah, so life's happened ever since, but that brought me closer to God than I ever thought would be possible. I didn't know. I mean, I'm still way, way too much of a sinner to brag about anything, but it's God was generous.
How
Yeah.
about do you see your girls?
I see them. I see them once a month now since I moved here. It's tough.
Yeah.
I pray for them, but I consecrated them to Saint Therese, so I
Beautiful.
trust that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it will be fine. They're not baptized, of course, because I didn't believe in that world. I didn't belong in that world back then. But one day, I pray that they will.
Amen.
I can give them a good example uh, and live a life that's worthy of the name that we call in
Well,
Jesus' name.
the fact that you were talking about how you confess to everyone, you might as well give it a shot with a Catholic priest. Well, you certainly confessed tonight, and I appreciate that. And I pray that a lot of people, that it will resonate, your story will resonate with a lot of people as well that are going through any of what you've gone through. And the graces that you just mentioned, go ahead. What were you going to say?
God can use, if we just give him a little bit like this, he gives so much more.
Amen. Amen. Um, yeah, the clear signal graces that you received, absolutely incredible. And to recognize the Bible in such a powerful way and to be able to study what you said about Proverbs really resonated with me. Short, sweet, even Ecclesiastes. When I first read it, I thought, man, this is depressing. And then with the proper context, it's just another beautiful, beautiful book.
Yes,
Oh my goodness.
it's all consolation. I was crying for. It's not because I wanted consolation. I wanted God in my life, but I already had him. I didn't know.
Yes. Well said. Absolutely. You already had him. So what is, if you were to condense the lesson down to a bullet point or 2 bullet points for the audience, for people that come across this video, whether they are in their 40s or in their 30s or perhaps in their 20s, learning about all those techniques that you were trying to learn as a 20-year-old, what would you tell, those
Mhm.
men?
Um, it's not so much about the head. Men get stuck in the head. I had to convince myself of all those. I had to talk myself through all my objections before I would give in to try something and then to try something else. It's important to know the reasons why we do, and that's why I believe fully the Catholic Church is the only true church and is the fullness of the truth. But we don't have to know everything before I take the first step. So that's the most important thing, is just knowing how much is enough to know before we can give that mental assent, so that we can finally take the life of prayer. The life of prayer is what matters.
Yes, agreed. Is there anything else that we did not cover that you wanted to cover?
I think so. No, yeah.
No.
I mean, probably yes, but
No.
that's fine. We don't have, it's fine for 1 hour.
No, no. That's a lot to kind of condense into one
Yeah.
hour. I totally get it. And I respect anyone that is willing, and there have been many on this program that are willing to share it all, to go there so that they see, so that the audience sees, so that society sees. It's not the end of the story. We
Yeah.
all make mistakes. We all fall in various ways. And my goodness, he is good
Yeah.
for
We
those
have a
that are willing to
really
lift an
good
eye to
God.
heaven. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Lift an eye and bend the knee and
Bend a knee.
come as we are. So
Yes.
there's nothing God won't do in His power if we humble ourselves to Him to ask for help. And I can't explain why there's evil in the world and all those things, but uh, once we come to Him, He gives peace. That's the main difference. The restlessness goes away. Of course, there's up and downs. There's falling. There's coming back up, getting back up. But there's a lasting. It's not a feeling of I have arrived, but it's I'm in the path. This is where I'm supposed to be,
Yes, I see
even my
that.
opinion.
And the other, I guess, word of encouragement for anyone is whether you grew up with a father or a mother, or you grew up in an orphanage, or you grew up in the worst human conditions possible, there is a testimony out there that goes that discusses that type of situation and how God worked through it. So what you said about lacking a father and not knowing what it means to be a man, man, I just appreciate you sharing that. How many men feel that way? Probably right now. Like, I don't know. I didn't have a role model. Well, through prayer, and I'm going to ask everyone to pray for Francisco, for his daughters, for his exes, for everyone that he mentioned in this story. Um, I already forgot where I was going with that, but we'll just say we pray for everyone involved in the story, and God turns, oh my goodness, turns these situations completely upside down when you least expect it, and there is hope across the board.
Yes,
And we will never stop. I will never stop talking about that because it's a beautiful thing that he does. And we need to talk more about that and less about the situations that seem helpless, hopeless, things like that. And that's
yes.
everywhere.
Mhm.
No, I just appreciate you very, very much,
Thank
and
you.
thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you so much, praise God.
Yeah, praise God. Well, everyone, please share this video with your cousins, with your children. Use prudence, figure out who needs to hear this, and be bold and share it with discernment and always prayerfully. And until next time, take care and God bless. Bye.